Okay. And the recording has started, correct?
Yes.
All right, let's start. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here during our Caregiving Advocacy Conference. It's good to see everybody. We so appreciate you being with us today. We're going to go ahead and get started. And our first presentation is around the 6 caregiving stages. We're going to go for about an hour and 15 minutes with 15 minutes for questions. And throughout our time together, I'd love for you to share insights and experiences that resonate with you in our chat room. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to stop the share. Okay, here we go. Why me? Why now? What now? Those are the 3 questions that I felt family caregivers were asking me over and over. And I first heard these questions after launching my very first online caregiving community in 1996. And I really thought about those questions and really thought, well, what's an answer that could provide comfort to any family caregiver who asks those questions? Because in truth, after a family member receives a diagnosis, we really turn to them to care for them. We worry about them. We support them. And then at night, when we're alone in our thoughts, we wonder, why me? Like, where did everybody else go? Why now? Life was so good for me. What now? What in the world am I going to do now? And as we ask those questions alone, we chide ourselves for being selfish. I shouldn't ask these questions. I'm not the one who's in pain and struggling. And yet, we feel pain. We struggle too. And the challenge for us is when we ask these questions, why me? Why now? What now? We are alone, which is one of the reasons that we feel so lonely during our caregiving experience. And I wanted to offer a guide so that when you felt alone, you could look to a guide that gave you answers. In addition, because we are so focused on someone else during our caregiving experience, we can feel that we lose ourselves. And I wanted this guide to be able to help you find yourself again. Because the goal is to keep a life during a life of caregiving. I challenged myself then in 1997 to think of a guide that could be helpful for any family caregiver so that they could find the right answers for their situation. And I thought about how we stage a disease process like Alzheimer's. And family caregivers shared with me that they felt much more in control today because of the staging and a little bit more ready for tomorrow because they understood what was going to happen next. So I thought, well, if we can stage a disease process, what if we staged a caregiving experience? And that's what I came up with. The first iteration in 1997 only included 4 stages. I put the concept out into the world, asked for feedback, and family caregivers helped me understand that there's actually 6 stages. And that's what we're going to talk about today. First stage, the expectant caregiver. Here's my question to you. How many individuals, let's say in the United States, do you think are in the expectant stage? I'd love for you to think about what percentage you think of individuals in the United States are in the expectant stage. And you can actually put a percentage in the chat room. And our good friend Beth from Canada has just joined us. So Beth, you can use Canada as yours. Oh, I love that you guys are, okay, putting some good percentages. So Barbara's suggesting 65%. Jacqueline is suggesting 45%. Okay, so these are really good guesses. You know what? Okay, so Beth is asking the question, does this mean they realize? It doesn't matter if they realize it. Okay, so we've got some other good guesses, 75 and 70%. Here's what it is. Oh, Pam, she's got it, almost all. And I would say 100% of us are in the expectant caregiver stage. And it's okay if we don't realize that. It's okay, because what we want to do is educate people about this stage. When I first developed the concept, I had the expectant caregiver stage among those first four. And people gave me a lot of pushback. Oh no, Denise, oh no. And I thought, you know what? I am sticking to my guns about this. There is an expectant stage, and it's important that we recognize all of us, 100% are in this stage. And it's also critical to know that even if you've had many experiences caring for a family member or friend, there still could be another one. There still could be someone else in your life who needs help. The challenge, of course, is we don't know when. And I think about the expectant caregiver stage as this vision of a dark cloud in the horizon. We don't know when the storm is going to hit. We don't know what storm is going to hit, but we see these dark clouds on the horizon. And what we do in this stage is prepare. So what we gather is a raincoat. Now, we don't necessarily put the raincoat on yet. It's not storming. It's just out there in the distance. But what we do is keep it on a hanger in our closet so we know where to find it. This stage has a keyword. All the stages have a keyword. The keywords are like your coping strategy. So for instance, in the expectant caregiver stage, our keyword is to ask. And our purpose is to prepare. And I'll add, our purpose is also to enjoy life and to pay attention to who and what we love. And as we pay attention for ourselves, we're going to pay attention for others in our life. We use the term caree for a care recipient, the individual who's receiving your care. We could think, really, that anyone in our life could be a caree. So we're going to pay attention to what and who our carees love. And our carees are just other family members and friends in our life in this stage. I also think our focus on preparing means we get our own act together. Oftentimes in this stage, we think about a caree having their durable powers of attorney in place, having financial situations organized. It's important we do that too. And here's why. If we're putting our own house in order, for instance, it makes it easier to invite others, like aging relatives, to put their house in order together with us. It's not just about them doing it, it's about all of us doing it. We all need to have our house in order. And if we do it together, there's less pressure. It's less intense on a caree. I think the other opportunity for us in the expectant stage is to ask about important relationships that others in our life have. I don't know if Tony's here yet this morning, but one of our certified caregiving consultants was practicing the 6 caregiving stages during one of our training programs, Tony. And when she was delivering her 6 caregiving stages based on her experience, she did something that I thought was so smart. And at the time, I was still caring for my parents. And so I used her insight with my parents. And what I learned from her was to ask for introductions to relationships that matter. Deanne, just want to make sure that the sound is still good for you.
Yes.
Introductions to relationships that matter. For my father, the relationship that mattered to him was the financial planner. So I was able to say to my dad, inspired by Tony's insight, "Hey, Dad, I'd love to meet your financial planner. Next time you go, can I come with?" And he said, "We don't have to wait until the next time I go. Let's just go. I'll make an appointment." And it was fabulous. I met his financial planner. We talked about how they had set up their investments, and we also uncovered that they hadn't set up their beneficiaries properly. So we were able to take care of it. We had really good conversations about what they want to use their money for and who their money goes to after their death. Ask about relationships. If you are a long distance family caregiver, you can do that just in conversations. Who did you spend time with today? Why do you like to spend time with them? Who's important to you? How do you like to spend your time? Why do you like to spend your time that way? Ask questions. When I started working with family caregivers through my own small business, I launched a newsletter called Caregiving, and I launched it in 1995, and I published it for just about 10 years. I would take a theme and focus on that theme in every monthly issue. And there was a theme around a good death that I focused on in one of the issues. And I thought, what does that mean to colleagues in our space? So I sent out an email to professionals in this space asking them, what does a good death mean to you? Then I thought, you know what? Why don't I ask family members and friends? And why don't I share what a good death means to me? So I sent out an email to my siblings and my parents and others who are friends. And I thought, I'm going to send it to everybody. I'm not going to decide who is going to actually respond. So I sent it to my brother Tim, thinking the last person who's going to respond to this is Tim. And the first person to respond to my question was Tim. And he gave me really good insights into how he wants to live life and then how he perceives a good death. It became this great reminder that I need to ask. And then if someone isn't prepared to enter into a conversation with an answer, then I know it's not the right time. And I can look for another opportunity to ask. My mother was a bereavement minister at her church for many years, so she helped families with funeral planning. I asked her, probably about 15 years before she died, while she was a bereavement minister, what her own funeral plans were. And she said to me, "I don't care. I don't care. Do what you want. I'm not going to be there." I thought, well, that's kind of ironic that you're a bereavement minister and you're not interested in talking about this. But I thought, not the right time. So when we think about our purpose in this stage, which is to really prepare by asking good questions, we're also understanding a process. And a process changes with each individual. It's the process of being ready for a tough conversation, for a difficult decision, for being ready for what's next. So we talked about the key word in this stage, the expectant stage, which is to ask. We talked about our purpose, which is to prepare. We've got our raincoat hanging in our closet, ready for us to take out. We're paying attention to the storm cloud. Even when we want to deny that there's a storm cloud, we're paying attention to it. And we also have stumbles and steadies in each of our stages. And the stumble in this stage is that stumble I almost made with my brother Tim, which was to decide he won't want to talk about it. The steady is to just ask. Something that's important to remember about these stumbles and steadies. We all stumble during our caregiving experience, and the steadies are there so we don't take a tumble and fall. In truth, if we take a tumble and fall, it's hard for us to get back up. Something that is so important for us to do during our caregiving experience is to keep going. A way to keep going is to take breaks because we need breaks. It's important that we keep going. Caregiving is going to keep going. And if we're down and can't get back up, caregiving still keeps going. We're back here, caregiving is up here. We want to stay as even as possible with caregiving, which is why we want to pay attention to the opportunities to take a break. Because when the opportunity presents itself, we want to take a break so that we stay even with caregiving. Okay, that's the expectant stage. Ask, prepare, and be realistic about the storm cloud you see. Yeah, stumble, don't tumble, Barbara, stumble, don't tumble, right? Yes. Second stage, the freshman caregiver. Now, some feel that they've skipped over this stage, and that might be you. You might skip over the freshman stage if there's an immediate medical emergency. Some walk a little bit more slowly into a caregiving experience. And that was the case with my dad. He was diagnosed with bladder cancer in 2004, and we maintained his bladder cancer diagnosis until 2015. So this slow entry into caregiving includes an opportunity for us to really focus on the keyword in this stage, and that's find. The keyword from the expectant stage, we bring into the second stage. So we've got two keywords, ask and find. And our purpose is to experiment, to try and see what works. One of the ways that we take a tumble and fall is our fear of making a mistake during our caregiving experience. We feel this intensity of making the right decision, of doing the right thing, and it can paralyze us. It's like a tumble and a fall. And if we get used to experimenting, just trying, then we absolve ourselves of failure. And if we look at trying something as an opportunity to get information about what works, then we're just much more open to what could work. In addition, it involves our carees in a different kind of way. Let's just try this, Mom, and see what works. We'll try it for a month. We'll have regular meetings to think through what's working and what's not. I'd love to have your feedback. It's just a nice way to get into that habit of thinking about what help to add, because we know it's hard to help to add in help. There's another thing about help. Help that helps can feel elusive. And if we understand how to organize help so it helps, it can help us keep help. And if we understand that not all help helps, we can cut our losses more quickly. We tried this, we wanted it to work, it's not the right help for us. And it could be it's not the right help right now. A stumble in this stage is really overlooking your caree's suggestions. When we needed to start adding more help, my parents were very resistant to actually using a home care agency. Instead, they were much more comfortable if we hired family members. And at one point, we had a niece, Sarah, helping. And then Sarah got burnt out and we needed more help. So my mom suggested that we ask Matt, who's my nephew. And at that time, Matt had just finished his undergrad, had a summer off preparing for grad school. So I thought, oh my gosh, what 22-year-old kid is gonna want to help his grandparents who are 89 and 86 for the summer? But I didn't say anything. Thank goodness I didn't say anything. And so my mom said, well, I'm going to call him and ask. And so she barely got the request out. Would you be interested in helping us this summer? And he said, absolutely. I'd love to help. I'll help you. So Matt helped for the summer. It was really wonderful. And for me, managing my own small business, Matt being with my parents for a few hours gave me a few hours where I didn't think about what's going on with them. What are they doing? I knew they were okay. In the expectant stage, we had our raincoat in the closet, hanging up. In the freshman stage, we start to think about, I'm not just going to keep it hanging in the closet anymore. I'm going to actually make it much more available. It's going to be with me. We might not necessarily feel like it's storming yet, but we can see that the storm clouds are coming closer. Expectant stage, ask. Freshman stage, find. So we have these two keywords, which become coping strategies that we're now going to bring into the third stage, which is the expectant caregiver stage. And I love that we have these two-word coping strategies so that when we feel like we are coped out, like I can't cope with anything else, what do? We can think, I could ask a question. Maybe I could find a strategy that will help. Now we're in the expectant caregiver stage. We are putting our coat on. And it's not just raining. It is all the storms. It feels like some days it's raining. Some days there's a tornado. Some days it feels like there's an earthquake. Other days it just feels like it's a blizzard.
I love the analogy.
Denise, it's the entrenched stage, not expectant. Entrenched.
Yeah, entrenched stage. Yes. Thank you, Tony. So we're in the entrenched stage now, the third stage. Thank you, Tony. Tony was the one I just talked about earlier today. Yeah, Tony, thanks for being here. So we're in the entrenched stage and we're going to put our raincoat on because it's storming and it feels like it's storming non-stop. And the key word in this stage is to receive. And it makes sense, right? If it's storming, if there's a blizzard, a hurricane, a tornado, a thunderstorm at the same time, we need to receive. So we bundle up. We are in the storm and we're going to do everything we can to make it through. In this stage, our keyword receive also leads us to our purpose, which is routine. Thinking about what's the routine that can help. As we go through these stages, we've been focusing on a purpose. The reason we focus on a purpose is to do just that, give us focus. If you imagine in this entrenched stage, where there's a blizzard, a thunderstorm, an earthquake, all happening at the same time, you think, where do I focus? Do I actually do something about the earthquake or the blizzard or the thunderstorm first? And the focus for this stage is around routine to help you have a routine to keep going. Now, the challenge is that all these storms are going to blow up your routine. So it seems so simple, a routine. Yes, I want a routine. And then while you're managing the blizzard, the thunderstorm, and the earthquake, the tornado comes and throws off your routine. We think about a routine for a caree and for yourself. Some family caregivers say, you know what, I'd love to have a routine for my caree, but I can't. I cannot figure out the routine because of the disease process. It's so unpredictable, and that's okay. Even if the routine is what you do once a week, depending on which day during the week it feels possible, that's a routine. It could be that there's a routine with a caree once a month. Whatever you can think about that happens regularly, even if you don't get specific to the day and time, that's a routine. You can think about a routine for yourself. When I was really stressed out, my back would feel like everything was sitting on top of it. My stress, my worries, my parents, my siblings, they were all sitting on my back. And it felt like it was stretching the muscles. And it took me a little bit to figure out, what do I do when my back is hurting so much? What I figured out is there's a cream I could use that when I put it on, immediately felt like my back was better. And even if it was just in my head, it was okay. And what I realized is taking care of that eased some of the worry, the stress, the pain. So I always had this particular cream on hand. It was on supply. I actually still have supplies of it because I just want to be ready for it. The other routine that I developed was posting a good morning message on social media. I started doing it in 2009 when I joined Twitter and I was trying to find my voice, and it became something that offered comfort to me. I posted a good morning message around 8 a.m. No matter what I was doing, I always took time to post that good morning message. And I would think, what do I want for myself? What's my wish for myself today? I would turn it into a message that I sent out to others. I wish for you. That routine was really helpful. It doesn't have to be an extensive, long routine. It just has to be like a default you go to. During the entrenched stage, at the very beginning of it, actually, for me, my oldest sister, Mary Ann, said, I am not helping you anymore. And she said that because we had a difficult situation she created. My mom had been hospitalized with an internal stomach bleed. It was just a nightmare trying to get the bleeding to stop. And at one point we thought, okay, we have figured it out. We had emergency surgery to remove a third of her stomach. She's good. And then she started bleeding again. And she was just done with everything. And she wanted to be transferred to a different hospital. I was going out of town. I saw my mom the morning I was leaving to go out of town to do some speeches. I suggested that we wait. She said, I don't care what you think. I'm getting out of this place. And she actually took the remote that she had from her under her hospital bed and she started banging it on the railing. She was that mad. I saw my older sister later that day. I said, Mom wants to transfer to a different hospital. It's not a good idea. She's not going to like it when she gets there. Please don't. I drove to Iowa. 3 hours later, I got voicemail messages. Mom is moving to a new hospital. I knew my mom wouldn't like it. They transferred her on Friday. I got home from my speeches Friday night, went to see my mom on Saturday, and she said, I hate it here. I want to go back to the other hospital. So on Monday, I spent the whole day working on a transfer to get my mom back to the other hospital. After that, my sister said, I'm not helping you anymore. So she literally never helped us again. That was part of what put us in the entrenched stage. My other two siblings, actually my other three siblings and I were okay with Mary Ann stepping outside of the picture. It was heartbreaking for my mom. One of the things that I think we get wrong in our caregiving space is we define caregiving as really being about tasks and chores. And a caregiving experience is about our worries, because we are worrying about how well our caree is doing physically and emotionally. We provide a ton of emotional support during our caregiving experience, and that can put us into the entrenched stage. really working through how do I help my caree during their heartbreaking experience? How do I help our family, which is feeling fractured because of the intensity of caregiving, and it no longer feels like a whole family. It is separated, the rifts. Entrenched is about what we do, finding the best treatment, finding the best help, doing what we can so our caree has quality of life, and it's about managing the emotional impact on our caree and on ourselves. And that's stress. Something to keep in mind. It all feels new to us when we're in a caregiving experience. We are learning a new language, the language of a disease process, the language of a system like the healthcare system and the payer system like insurance, the language a doctor uses, the language that a community program uses so that our caree qualifies for help. We're learning all of this, and it all feels new. And it's important for us to remember what isn't new for us to learn is what we know about our caree, what we know about ourselves. And that expertise is invaluable because it helps us look at a decision from our family system, from our caree's perspective, from our perspective. And those insights, because of that expertise in our family system, in our caree, and in ourselves, helps us make the decisions that are right for us. In addition, we are an expert in our caree's disease process. My dad had nodules on his lungs that were non-cancerous, but on a regular basis, we would go to his pulmonologist and they would do a scan just to make sure that the actual nodules didn't change. After one visit with the pulmonologist, we had a follow-up with my dad's primary care physician. My mom, my dad, and I are sitting in the exam room, and you know how these exam rooms are. They're so tight and tiny, and you feel the pressure of waiting for news. And so it always feels like the walls are closing in and you're sitting on top of each other, waiting. So the doctor comes in with my dad's medical records. And he pulls out the pulmonologist's report, looks at the scan and says, "Whew, Roger, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but you've got lung cancer. I'm going to refer you to an oncologist." And my dad, who's sitting on the exam table, drops his head. Oh. And I think, wait a minute, what's changed? So I ask the doctor, what has changed in these nodules? They've been benign for all these years. What do you see that's different? The doctor started opening up the medical records, paging through all these pages, pulled out 2 pages, looked, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, there is no change. There's no cancer." That's our expertise. That's what we bring into this experience. We follow our caree's disease progress and we follow along with the disease progression in a way that no other primary care physician can do because we live with it. Even from a distance, we know because we are in touch. We are observing, we are asking the good questions on a regular basis to find good information so that we are still making the right treatment decisions for our caree, for ourselves, and for the family system. Okay, I'd love for you to share in the chat room your expertise about yourself about your family system, and about your caree. Okay. And as you do that, I'll just give you a reminder of where we are in the 6 caregiving stages. So we talked about the expectant stage, and the key word is to ask. We see the storm clouds. We don't want to see them, but we're looking because we see them. And then we're moving into the freshman stage, getting our feet wet with caregiving. And the key word in this stage is to find, because we're going to absolve ourselves from the pressure of failing. And then we move into the entrenched stage. We are wearing the raincoat because it storms all around us. And we're going to receive. And our purpose is really about creating routines that can help us. One other thing to keep in mind about a routine. My sister Marianne, who removed herself from helping, every once in a while would send me a text that I would think, what do I do about this? And my routine, whenever Marianne reached out to me, was to actually reach out to the other siblings and say, I just got a text from Marianne. I'm going to read it to you. I would read it to them, and then I would say, what do you think we should do? And then we would talk about it, and then I would follow up or not, depending on what we decided to do. That routine really helped me. The other routine I developed was if I had a bad day with my parents, I didn't just keep it to myself. I would reach out to one of my brothers especially, and I would call and say, guess what happened today? Routine to vent and share helped me. It helped me unload. It helped me stay in a good place. Okay, so yeah, thank you guys for these comments in the chat room. Yeah, the entrenched stage with a caree in and out of the hospital is really, really tough. Really tough. And it's hard to think about what could we do other than these hospitalizations. And it could be that a good question to ask the doctor is, what can we do so that we're not in and out of the hospital so much? One thing that was really helpful for me was palliative care, because going in and out of the hospitals was difficult, and we looked to palliative care to help manage at home. I want to also acknowledge that one person managing all this is impossible. On a regular basis, when I talk about the 6 caregiving stages and I talk about my caregiving experience, people will say to me, oh, you have all this experience, like decades of experience. You must have done it must have been perfect for you when you're caring for your parents. It must have been just like this smooth road. I always think, like, yeah, no, it's never a smooth road. Never. It's never a good experience. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. So Dan, I don't know if you can kind of take that situation with the whiteboard away. That'd be great. Okay. All of us have difficulties and hardships during our caregiving experience. And I wish it weren't that way. I wish it weren't. And you might think, what am I doing that's making this so much harder than it has to be? And I'm telling you, it's not you. It's how hard this experience is. The next workshop is around the 19 caregiving systems, and that really helps us understand why it's so hard, because we're managing, navigating, and advocating within 19 caregiving systems. Yeah, it's impossible. And I also want to acknowledge that this in and out of the hospital does create the burnout, which you're talking about. Of course, you're burnt out. If we think about a routine for burnout, that can help us too. I also want to acknowledge that when it's in and out, the inconsistency does blow up the routine. Something we can think about is a daily recovery plan, where we take a few moments at the end of every day and give ourselves space and time to recover. Something that is so hard for us to do during our caregiving experience is relax. It's not a relaxing experience. We are not relaxed in the hospital. And guess what? We're not relaxed out of the hospital either. We're waiting for that other shoe to fall. We're waiting for the next storm to come. And it's important that we take time for our own recovery, because we want to get through this. One of the reasons that we talk about keeping a life during a life of caregiving is you have a life. One thing that can happen when we're burnt out is that we sit on the couch because we're taking some time. And as we sit on the couch, we think, gosh, this is really comfortable. Wow, this is a great couch. And then we think, you know what would really make this couch comfortable? A tub of ice cream and a bag of Doritos. And so then we have a tub of ice cream and a bag of Doritos while we're comfy on the couch. And then we think, you know what would be great? Netflix. And then Netflix sucks us in because it's hours and hours and hours. To be on the couch with the tub of ice cream and the bag of their Doritos and the Netflix feels good for a short period of time. I think we all deserve our own pity party. It's important for us to know that our life is not on the couch. Our life is not a tub of ice cream, a bag of Doritos, and Netflix. We have to get off the couch, even when it's so hard to do that, because there is a life for us. There is a life for us. Most important, we deserve a life. Even if it feels like our life is getting a little smaller or a lot smaller during caregiving, it's okay. It's our life. We want to keep that. We want to keep that. Okay. Oh, thank you guys so much for sharing in the chat room. We're going to move to the fourth stage. And this is the pragmatic caregiver. And this is when you think, storms. Yeah, what's the big deal? I know what I'm doing. I've done it. I'm going to keep doing it. So we get a little more comfortable. We're not so, ooh. We think, I get that storms are a part of this experience, and I have figured out how to calm them, how to calm myself. And the key word in this stage is to welcome. When I moved into the pragmatic stage, I started questioning myself. Why was I still so bothered by my dad, for instance? Why was I feeling so overwhelmed? I thought this pragmatic stage meant, ooh, rainbows, sunshine, like no storm clouds. And what I realized is the key word is about welcoming whatever we feel, including anger, guilt, frustration, and a little bit of a dance with bitterness. I think something that keeps us in the entrenched stage is when we tell ourselves we shouldn't feel guilty. We shouldn't feel anger. Of course, we're going to feel guilt. Of course, we're going to get angry. Of course, we're going to get frustrated. And when we allow and welcome these emotions, we give ourselves a chance to use energy in a different way. It takes a lot of energy to say, don't feel that. It's much more energy. It's a much better way to use our energy when we say, well, I was really mad and I had every right to be mad because that was not right. What happened? Okay, I'm going to keep moving on. When I was in the pragmatic stage with my parents, my brother Tim, who I talked about earlier, unexpectedly died. And it put me right back into the entrenched stage. So we think about these stages as moving along, but we also want to keep in mind that we can go back and forth because life happens to us during our caregiving experience. Something unexpected can move us from pragmatic back to entrenched. And Tim's death did that. I was thinking about what helped me then move back into pragmatic. My brother died on a Monday morning. I had just posted my good morning message. And then I got a text from my sister-in-law that Tim had died. I couldn't write a good morning message for 6 months. I couldn't sit down and write it. And I had been writing good morning messages every day for years, for almost 20 years. Good mornings were gone for me after my brother died. 6 months later, on his birthday, February 22nd, I got up and I thought I can write a good morning message today. And I did. And that's what moved me back into a pragmatic stage. We're going to have moments when we are ready. And if we think again about a process, we also want to be gentle with ourselves as we process difficult news, life-changing events, unexpected losses that are outside of our caregiving experience and impact us during our caregiving experience. As we think about a stumble in this stage, we can decide, you know what? I shouldn't be thinking about my future. I should just stay focused on caregiving. And we can think that because many of us have a wish that our caregiving experience would simply be over. And it makes sense. It makes sense that we'd want something that's difficult and hard to be over. We jump, though, to a conclusion about what that wish says about us. And we decide we are a terrible person because that wish means we want our caree to die. And I want to let you know that the wish is really about the end of pain and suffering for you and for your caree. It makes sense that you would have this wish. It's not about death, wishing death on someone. It's about wishing that pain and suffering would end. And of course, we want pain and suffering to end for you. So if we put our future life on hold, we decide, I can't think about my future. That's not right. It's terrible if I do that. Then we actually take away our future. It is smart and wise to think about, what do you want for yourself in the future? What can you do today so that you arrive in a better shape in your future? Okay, I'd love for you to share in the chat room. What's a wish you have for yourself, for your own future? A wish could be travel. A wish could be a different move in your career. A wish could be having love for yourself. A wish could be writing a book. A wish could be achieving some kind of amazing goal like climbing a mountain or running a marathon. Ah, thank you, Erica. The wish is for happiness, traveling, living stress-free. What fabulous wishes you guys are sharing in the chat room. And what I would encourage you to think about is, how can you make that wish your reality right now? Even if it's just for a few moments of happiness, a few moments of no stress, a few moments of planning the next trip. How can you make that wish more of your reality, even if it's just a few moments every day? The other opportunity for us in this pragmatic stage is to really gain insights into ourselves and into our caree. As we spend so much time with our caree, we can feel intentional about what we learn about them, because that's always going to be helpful. We talk about the role of family caregiving, and I also think interwoven within that role is the role of the family historian. Because you spend so much time with your caree, you understand their stories. I used to feel this intense pressure to understand every story of my parents from the moment they were born or the moment they could remember anything about their life. And I thought, I've got to get this. And then I realized I'm never going to get all the stories. But what I am going to get is all of the essence of who they are, who they were. And it's the essence that becomes the stories we tell about them to other generations. Whatever stories you can capture, awesome. Remember their essence. That's what you're looking for. That's the story. Okay, so we've gone through 4 stages. Expectant, freshman, entrenched, pragmatic. We now have 4 keywords: ask, find, receive, welcome. Now we're moving into the 5th stage, and this is the transitioning stage. Our keyword in this stage is to allow, because we're going to allow a caree's natural cycle of life to end. Now, in this stage, we start to take off our raincoat. We see the end. I want to acknowledge that some, including our carees, tighten their hold on the raincoat. And it's one of our challenges. We understand the reality of our caregiving situation means we start to take our coat off in the transitioning stage. And the coat comes off at our caree's death. There's actually 2 transitions in this stage. It's the transition that happens as our caree is walking through their last months, weeks, and days. And then it's our transition after their death as we think about what's next. The transitioning stage was one of the 4 initial stages that I talked about. And it took me a while to figure this one out because I knew there was a transition and I kept thinking it's our caree's transition. And then I was in Winnipeg in January, delivering the 6 caregiving stages as a workshop, as a keynote at a conference. And in the middle of the conversation I was having about this stage, the transitioning stage, it hit me. Our transition is inspired by what's happening to our caree, but it's our transition. Because what we transition to doing before our caree dies is from doing to being. That doesn't mean we stop providing hands-on care or stop managing hands-on care. We're doing all that. We are doing that. But what changes is how we feel about death. If we think about all the other stages, in many ways, what we're doing is battling death, our caree's death. And in the other stages, we've been winning that battle. And we won because of all we did. We were on high alert. We paid attention to the red flags. We were able to keep going. Our caree lived. In this stage, we learn to be with end of life. Years ago, one of the members of my online community at the time really focused on trying to cure her mom's recurrent urinary tract infections. So her mom was bedbound. She was 94. She was receiving hospice care. And Sandy, her daughter, was very devoted and committed to treating the UTIs and curing them. And at one point, after she had exhausted all the specialists and doctors in her area, she decided to take her mom to a specialist a couple hours away to see what he would recommend. So she bundled her mom up, got her mom in the car. They went to the doctor's office, sat in the waiting room, went in to talk to the doctor, and he repeated what everybody else had told her. This is what's happening at your mom's end of life. We are not going to cure these UTIs. They are going to remain chronic. So she bundled her mom back up. They got back into the car and she drove home. A few months after her mom died, she came back to the community and she said, boy, I wish I would have spent just time being with my mom. She said, I think about that trip to the specialist and I think, oh, we could have done something much better that day than that. That's around the transition from doing to being. It is challenging for us because we are going to think, what else could I do? I did so much that worked in the past. What if I'm not doing enough? What does that say about me that I'm not doing enough? It's hard. The other challenge is sometimes healthcare professionals aren't going to be as honest with us about a caree's end of life as we need. And it's up to us to really gather that information from doctors and ask specific questions. When we allow the natural cycle of life, we stay realistic about caregiving. And the challenge is some can't, including our carees. My parents were very resistant to their end of life until they weren't. And then it was game on. Let's get hospice. What I learned is that I could allow them to keep the coat on while I started removing it so that I was ready when they were ready to take the coat off. I wanted to be ready. When my mom was dying, she received hospice care the last 3 weeks of her life. That wasn't my decision, that was her decision. We would have started hospice services much earlier, but she had the coat on, and that was okay. During her last couple weeks, we had a great hospice nurse, and she came on a Friday. My mom was alert and oriented, and she did an exam of my mom. My mom's name is Sally, and she said, Sally, from the look of your feet, I can see some things are changing and you've got just a few days left. And my mom wanted to know, she was very bottom line, just tell me. So my mom said, okay, all right, just a few days. Now, Sarah, the nurse, gave us this instruction and this insight to my mom, myself, and my sister Julie. So we knew my mom had just a few days left, and this was on a Friday. As Sarah was gathering up her supplies, Julie and I walked down the hallway, and Julie turned to me and said, "You know what, I'm not going to come this weekend because nothing's going to happen." I thought, what? Like totally keeping the code on. So I thought, okay. I said, Julie, so I said, okay. So I went back and talked to Sarah myself, and I said, Sarah, could you repeat what you said about my mom's feet and how quickly you think my mom is going to die to Julie? Because I don't think she got it. And Sarah said, absolutely. So I said, Julie, come on back here. I just want to ask Sarah another question. I said, Sarah, tell us again about what's happening with my mom's feet. And so Sarah said, and she spoke directly to Julie, you can see the change in her feet. We call that modeling. And that means it's just a few days left, that your mom is probably going to die in a few days. And my sister gasped. What? She said she's going to die in a few days. We were able to comfort her, and it just reminded me about how we keep that coat on and how some of us need a little more support to feel okay taking that coat off. What's hardest about our role is we are always leading. We are always leading in reality, and people are following, and we're thinking, come on, everybody, come on. And that can be difficult. It can be exhausting. It can be frustrating. And it's important that we still stay in front, staying current with the caregiving reality. A stumble in this stage, especially as our caree is dying, is to feel like, you know, I know that Marianne wants to come visit, but she doesn't deserve to be visiting our mom at our mom's end of life. So we're going to say no. We're going to appoint ourselves the gatekeeper. Instead, be open to everyone visiting who wants to visit. Be open to whoever your caree wants to visit, and then take care of yourself during those visits. Marianne never did come to see my mom at her death. And my mom was very unsure about what to do. My mom had reached out to Marianne over and over and over and over, and Marianne was always so mean to her. I hate to say it, but she was just mean to my mom. And so we were debating, what do we do about Marianne? And so my mom met with the priest, asked the priest for insights. She talked it out with me. She talked it out with a cousin who came to visit, and she decided, I'm just going to send her a letter. So my mom always had note cards ready to go, ready to send. I pulled out a couple. She picked one, and then she dictated what the message to Marianne was. And so that's how we worked through it with my mom. Now, Marianne started texting my dad a couple days before my mom died. And at that time, my mom was not alert and oriented. And we encouraged and invited Marianne to come and see my mom, and she never did. Something that I thought was also interesting is what we value is how we spend our last days as we're dying. My mom valued relationships. So her last days were all about connecting to relationships that mattered. My dad valued financial security. So as he was dying, he asked Matt and Sarah, remember I talked about Matt and Sarah helping? They came back to help as my dad was dying. He asked Matt and Sarah to set up his bank accounts in his financial institutions, their apps on his iPhone. And he looked at it on a Thursday afternoon. And then on Friday morning, he started his transition, and then he died on a Sunday morning, just a few days later. He looked at his financial situation and said, oh, that's good enough. And then he was ready to die. And I wish I would have understood that a little bit better about my dad, because we would tell him all the time, Dad, you have enough? We've calculated you could live another 25 years. And he was 92 at that time. You could live another 25 years and you would be okay, but it wasn't enough. He needed to see it. And I wish I would have thought of doing that, putting some apps on his phone so he could actually see it. Because when he saw it, he was like, okay, I'm ready to go. So Matt and Sarah had helped out earlier in our caregiving experience, and I brought them back to help at the end. And it was very helpful because they understood my dad. And my dad had a gin martini every day. And I did the shopping for my parents, so I knew how much he was drinking. We tried to get him to cut back. He wasn't going to cut back. And when he was dying, he was in a hospital bed in his apartment and he had a fractured pelvis. And we did not care if he asked for a gin martini at 11 a.m. And Matt knew about my dad and his gin martini, so he was ready to always make Grandpa a gin martini. And at the end, I'll be honest with you, it was like the idea of vermouth, but really it was just straight shots of gin. That's what my dad was drinking. A couple weeks before my dad died, I knew we were low on gin, so I went out and bought a bottle of gin. I knew that was just enough. The next day, my dad said to my sister Julie, I need gin. And so my sister Julie went out and bought a bottle of gin. And this is what she bought. I said, Julie, we don't need that big bottle of gin. She's like, we don't know. We got to have that bottle of gin. Well, my dad died when he finished the little bottle of gin. So then we had this massive bottle of unopened gin. And as we were going through his apartment and clearing it out at the end, there was this massive bottle of unopened gin. And Julie's like, I can't return it. They won't take it back. What do we do with this? What do we do with this? And I would say, you take it home. It's yours. Take it home. She's like, we don't drink gin. We're not going to use it. I don't want it. I don't want it. And then it was like, she was like, you take it. You take it. And so because she kept saying, you take it, I took it. And so this is the bottle of gin Julie bought as my dad was dying. And I'm trying to drink it. And it's been almost 2 years. And you can see that it's a struggle. And I'm trying different drinks to make with this gin because gin to me tastes like motor oil. And so every time I mix up a drink of gin with something, I take a picture of the photo and I send it to Keith, my brother, and Julie, my sister. I tell you that story because what happens is people will see the problems that are created during caregiving and they're going to be like, I can't take this problem, you take it. So my sister, for whatever reason, just internalized all the problems in this bottle of gin and said, I cannot, you take it. And so what we do in our caregiving experience is take the problems. And we take the problems because people get how well equipped we are to problem solve and to manage. Now, I tell you that just to be aware that people are going to hand you their problems and you don't have to take the big bottle of gin. You can always say, that's yours. You can manage it. Okay, so we've gone through 5 stages. Expectant, freshman, entrenched, pragmatic, transitioning. We now have 5 keywords. Ask, find, receive, welcome, and allow. Our 6th stage is the Godspeed caregiver. And I think of this stage as about 2 years after caregiving ends. I think it takes us about 2 years after our caree's death to close out caregiving. And it's not just about, for instance, selling a house and cleaning it out. It is about closing out our personal caregiving experience. That takes time. We have to get used to, for instance, having time. We have to get used to going out into the world, which now looks different for us. We have to get used to, for instance, going into the grocery store and having a different shopping list. All of that is part of our transition. And then we move into the Godspeed caregiver stage. After my parents died, I was able to inherit some money. my dad and his financial situations. And one of the first things I bought was this pink raincoat because I knew my mom would love it for me. You know, it's got this cute inline. Oh my gosh. And I think about that as what we carry with us because of our caregiving experience. I'm not going to put this experience back into the back of the closet. I'm going to keep this experience with me because it was profound. It was meaningful. And I want to be inspired to keep profound, meaningful activities in my life. I want to live, and this reminds me to live. The key word in this stage is to treasure. So we treasure memories, we treasure experiences, we treasure the good and the bad and everything in between. We treasure the good and the bad and everything in between because it reminds us of our humanity. And when we embrace our humanity, we're able to make these connections and relationships that are meaningful and profound because we understand our emotions. That's the gift of the pragmatic stage, is to welcome all these emotions, which we then later understand are universal. So when someone says, I am so frustrated, we understand. When someone says, I had a moment of joy yesterday, we understand. It's those understandings that help us live a good life. In this stage, our purpose is to live that good life. A stumble in this stage is to minimize everything that happened during our caregiving experience. For instance, let's say you go to the grocery store and you run into someone you haven't seen in 10 years and they say, oh my gosh, Denise, tell me what's new. And you say, nothing much. Instead, what we can say is, my parents recently died and I cared for them. And I feel grateful for the opportunity to care for them. And now I'm just living a good life. We want to treasure the experience. And it's really important that we treasure good and bad because we're going to judge ourselves for our bad moments. And there's tons of bad moments, right? And all it does is give us an opportunity to learn to have better moments. When I think about being impatient with my dad, I think, oh gosh, I don't like that about myself. I want to be better. I want to be better. I want to be better so that I look to see how can I be better at being patient rather than judging ourselves for the bad moments. We can be inspired by them because they can be our inspiration for better moments. Okay, we went through 6 stages. And the keywords for the 6 stages, again, are ask, find, receive, welcome, allow, treasure. We treasure it. We treasure it. And those 6 words are our coping strategies. Because in caregiving, we learned to cope. We also learned what gives our life its value. So we live a valuable life. Okay, what questions might you have? Yeah, thanks for all your insights in the chat room. I'd love for you also to tell me which keyword resonates most with you that you're going to turn into a coping strategy. Oh, patience. Oh my gosh, Barbara, thank you for this question. Can you talk about transitioning between stages, how to help along and not get stuck? And that's the question everybody asks, because that's one of the questions I really reflect on. Because there are some things that happen that propel us into stages. For instance, the expectant caregiver, the storm is what we see, but we move into the freshman stage, for instance, because the storm gets closer. And then we move into the expectant stage because all the storms are happening. So those stages feel a little bit out of our control. It's the transition from entrenched to pragmatic that I think we all want to make, right? We don't want to stay entrenched like, oh, we want to feel, ooh, I can breathe again. And I really think when we learn to just welcome our emotions, that can help us with moving from entrenched to pragmatic. And I also think we can tell ourselves, you know what? I want to be in the pragmatic stage. So here's what I'm going to do differently. Something that I think is very important when we're working with family caregivers is to not tell them what stage we think they're in. It's whatever stage you think you're in that matters most. And then looking at the keywords as a coping strategy, the purpose to stay focused, and the stumbles and steadies. We can be in a different stage, and we can decide to be in that different stage. It's your experience. So you take what works for you in your experience. And Tony is sharing, I love to treasure the good and bad moments, to learn from them, to accept we are human, to be a better person. I think one of the hardest parts for me after my parents died was the memories of my bad moments. I was just like, man, like, what? What was I doing? What was I thinking? What was I saying? And it became easier for me to remember those bad moments when I shifted my perspective, that it's not a judgment of me, it's just an inspiration to be better. I lost my patience and temper with my dad a lot. My dad was, and I'm not just saying this from my perspective, but my dad was a narcissist. So there were, we always had to center things around my dad. That was what he felt comfortable with. Well, my mom was really important. And so there were times where it wasn't about him, it was about my mom. And I was very adamant. It's not about you, Dad. It's about mom. And he did not like that. And it became a challenge for us. It just helped me learn how to cope a little bit better. And to have a relationship with him after my mom died, that was really quite sweet, to be honest with you. And I would have never thought that I could have had a sweet relationship with my dad. I called my parents every night at 7 o'clock. And then after my mom died, I thought, well, my dad won't want me to call. My dad said, I really would appreciate it if you would call me every night at 7. So then I called him every night at 7. And we talked about politics. My dad was a lifelong Republican until 2016. And then he was a full-blown Democrat. And he was very active politically in a way that was about writing letters to his representatives and editors, for instance, of the Chicago Tribune. So we are in Chicago. And when he died, in his obituary, I was able to include an image of the last letter to the editors that the Chicago Tribune had published from him. And it had happened, his last letter was published in 2021, and he died in 2023. And I thought, wow, what a great way to remember him as being someone politically active in the way that worked for him. And that was part of the sweet relationship I had with him that I did not think was possible. And I think in that pragmatic stage, when we're looking at welcoming, which means we welcome our emotions. It also gives us the capacity to welcome a relationship that's good and bad. And stop putting pressure on ourselves to just have a good relationship. It's a healthy relationship that we want. And a healthy relationship includes room for both of us to have good and bad days. That's the health. And when we welcome that, it can change the relationship. What other questions might you have? Thank you, Barbara. That was a great question. Okay, I don't want to not give you time to type in your question, but I think if you guys have your questions answered. Oh, do we have a handout? Leanne, we have a handout. There's a couple different cheat sheets, I call them, about the stages. And when we do a follow-up to this conference, I'll include PDFs of the cheat sheets. There's also a book, and the books that I've written are free on Kindle next week. And I'll send a reminder too, so you can download it. The caregiving guide is around the 6 caregiving stages. So it takes a deeper dive into all that we talked about today. And it takes a much deeper dive into the stumbles and steadies. And again, that's free next week. You can download it on Kindle. Yeah. So Anton is sharing, I like the word treasured and not judging ourselves on how we should have behaved in certain situations. And I'll tell you what, we forget everything that led up to that imperfect, impatient moment. We forget, for instance, that we were sleep deprived, that we were managing multiple hospitalizations, that a family member, a sibling said, I'm out, that we hadn't had time to eat, and that we were also trying to stay employed. We forget about all of that, which led up to our imperfect, impatient moment. And if we keep in mind the context around that imperfect, impatient moment, we can be much kinder toward ourselves. It's not that we just happened to be impatient. It was all the things that led up to it. It doesn't just happen. There are things, there's context that's happening. Okay, so here's what I'd love for you guys to do. I'm going to ask you which stage you think you are in. And just as an aside, when I say the expectant caregiver, you are all in the expectant caregiver stage. Okay, so I'm going to ask you which stage you're in. We'll go stage by stage. And when you hear your stage, I want you to type in the chat room, yes. That's it, just one word, yes. Okay, Coach Ken is sharing something really great too. Consistently in the pragmatic stage, but have learned to treasure the experiences along the way. That is beautiful. And that's why we have these 6 keywords. You're going to use them, right? You don't have to wait to the end. You can use them throughout. Thank you for that, Coach Ken. Great to have you here today as well. Okay, so here we go. You're just going to answer yes in the chat room when I ask you which stage you're in. Okay, so here we go. The expected caregiver stage. Yeah, Stephanie is like, all ready for the yes. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, yes, yes, yes. All the yeses, all the yeses. We're all in the expectant caregiver stage. You know, I also want to mention when we're thinking about welcoming all the emotions we feel, it is normal to dread being in the expectant caregiver stage, especially if you've already been through caregiving a few other times. It makes sense that you dread it again. Be honest about that. And then you can also think about, well, what am I dreading about this? And start to think through, if I'm dreading this, what's my solution? What can I find that can help? Okay, thank you all. So we did the expectant caregiver stage, the freshman caregiver stage. So if you're in this stage, please type in yes. Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's move to the entrenched stage. If you're in the entrenched stage, please put yes in the chat room. Oh, yeah, thank you, Hillary. I love that. Yeah, I love the enthusiasm. Okay, so we did 3. So now we'll move to pragmatic. If you are in the pragmatic stage, I'd love for you to put yes in the chat room. Ah, yes. And there are some of us who are in the same, more than one stage at the same time. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's move into the transitioning stage. If you're in the transitioning stage, go ahead and put yes in the chat room. Okay, and now the Godspeed stage. If you are in the Godspeed stage, I'd love for you to put yes in the chat room. Wow. Okay. Thanks to all of you. There are days when we're going to have a question, and the question is, can I keep going? And when you ask yourself that question, can I keep going? I want you to think of all our yeses. So think about all these yeses in the chat room. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. We believe in you. Yes, you can. Okay, everybody. We're going to take our break. Thanks for being such a great audience. We're going to come back in 13 minutes. So depending on what your time zone is, we're going to come